Alright, that takes us to our final segment. Drum roll.
Don't have any drums.
The deck of many questions. Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. We'll work on some sound effects for that.
Yeah.
Alright, now, the deck of many questions at the moment is just a concept for reasons which will become quite apparent. What we're hoping to do with this session is to have community questions from the listeners who get in touch via our social media, via the Discord, whatever. We will put any and all of those questions into a hat and pull them out. We will then assign one of the three of us to answer that question. We'll choose at random, just the same as we'll pull the question out of the hat. We'll pull one of us out of that hat. That person must answer that question regardless of what's on it, and they must answer it honestly. Addison, Troy, did I describe that correctly?
Well, let's get into the concept of, firstly, the deck of many things, which some of you D&D players may be familiar with. Those of you who aren't D&D players and you're just listening to the podcast, essentially what it is, it's a deck filled with cards that will do very random things. Some things are very good, some things are very bad. And this sort of randomness we really want to interject at the end of the show. So when it comes to suggesting questions, we'd love it if you keep in mind the theme of the deck. So, you know, give us some bombshell questions, you know, maybe anything that like might expose us as a DM, you know, like
Spice. We want spice.
when was the last time you lied to your players, this sort of thing. But then we also want what was your happiest moment as a GM? You know, these kinds of questions will be absolutely perfect to
it's got to be
make this
related to
segment.
D&D. You can't just ask us like, when did you lose your virginity? You can't ask us
Yeah,
questions like that. It has
exactly.
to be related to what we're talking about. Otherwise,
Yeah.
what's the point?
Yeah, and I think one of the cool things about it is there is that opportunity, like, to really make us sweat because of the fact that there will be some questions that, because me and Troy bandied some about that are a bit like, I hope I do not get this question because one, you all know when I'm lying, and two, it will just be awkward. But then there are others where you're like, oh no, you know what? If I get that question, that will slap. That will go so well.
We've got some example questions here that we've written ourselves just for the first episode, but hopefully, you know, subsequent episodes will have questions from listeners. All right, so what we're going to do for the deck of many things, we have 10 questions. We're going to roll a d10 to determine which question we're going to answer. Then we're going to roll a d6 to determine who answers that question, and we're each going to take one question. Make sense, guys?
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. All right,
I've
Addison,
seen
you've
some
got
of these questions, so I'm nervous.
All right, Addison, you have the dice. Do you want to start by rolling the d10?
So that is a number 1.
Number 1. There is no question for number 1. Could you please roll that again?
2.
2. Okay, the question is... I like this question, actually. I would answer this myself if it wasn't randomized. Is it bad for DMs to pick and choose their players?
Oh no.
That's the question.
Here we go.
All right, now the next part, we're going to roll the d6. 1 to 2 will be me, 3 to 4 will be Troy, 5 to 6 will be Addison.
All right.
The roll was 3.
Damn, I really wanted that one.
Oh god. Okay.
Take it away, Troy.
Troy's like the nicest guy as well, so putting him on the spot like this is like so shit.
Okay. All right. So, Leon, if you want to just say the question out loud once more.
Is it bad for DMs to pick and choose their players?
Okay. My answer? No. To a degree. Now, I'm gonna stick with no because I know these guys are gonna police me and be like, no, you gotta answer the question. So I will give.
I was
give my
genuinely
answer.
just about to call cop out. but
Yeah. I'm not gonna cop
I'll let you
out. My
continue.
answer is no. It's not bad. And the reason that I feel that it's not bad is because, much like Addison said, when he plays D&D and when he DMs, he has this very visual and almost filmic style of running it. And I very much do the same thing. And also being a videographer, someone who's done sort of music videos and other small creative projects, you choose the actors and the people that you want to work with. And because you have that freedom of choice, typically you can refine the end result. Now, obviously, if you're just playing a game as part of a club, obviously there are going to be rules that might change that. But if you're in a personal setting, if you are able to pick the people that you want to play with, then there is nothing really wrong with the DM just saying, I want to play with these guys. So that's my 2 cents on it. I'm going to stick by what I said. Oh my god, I'm ready for the waves of counter arguments that'll come, but I'm down for a discussion, and yeah, that's my opinion. Fuck.
I would 100% agree with you. 100%.
Well, I can only imagine the community is going to suggest even more good questions like this one.
That's the idea.
And I hope my luck is on my side in the future.
All right, thank you.
You're wrong. Like you make a good point about like if you're in your own house, like you don't just invite random people into your house, do you?
No,
you choose,
exactly.
So like that makes sense.
Yeah, but it's like if you've got a group of friends and like say you've got 8 of them, but you only want to run a game for 4, and you've got to essentially eliminate like half of your friendship circle. It should be, I guess, a split decision, or at least like random if you think that they're all equal, but really you can't get away from the biases. I think that's my point here. It's like you can't help but get away from the fact that like I enjoy playing with this player because, you know, he does the kind of shit that I enjoy.
My missus wants to play, so I'm going to let them play, obviously.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Another way to put it is like if you're playing a sport, let's say football for example, you have a bunch of guys in your team, you're going up against another team, and there's one guy on your team who likes to go for the ankles. Do you want to keep playing with that kind of person?
Yeah, I think
that's how I'll put it. I'll put it that way.
I think both sides of the team would have an opinion on such a thing.
Yeah.
So do you want me to roll again, Leon?
Yeah, give us another D10 roll. Get it nice and close to the microphone so we can hear that sexy dice bounce.
0. So that's 10.
That'll be 10. Okay, this will be an easy one. The question is, what are your biggest inspirations for writing?
And that is a 2, so that's you, Leon, isn't it?
That's me. Okay, my biggest inspirations for writing. This is actually a hard question for me. I was kind of hoping I wouldn't get this one. I don't really write anything. I barely plan my sessions. I plan my sessions like an hour before we're about to start. I mean, you know, between sessions, I'll have ideas ticking around in my head, but I won't settle on what I'm going to do for that session until about an hour before the session. That said, I do have some inspirations. One I've already mentioned, Harmon Quest. I take a lot from that. And then I have inspirations that I have for individual settings. For example, when I ran Curse of Strahd, the biggest piece of inspiration I used for that was Castlevania on Netflix. That is the exact vibe I was aiming for.
Yeah.
What a show.
On that setting. Yeah, it's amazing.
So good. I still need to watch the newest season, but it's just so good.
Whenever I picture Barovia in my mind, I picture Castlevania. And at the moment, I'm running Ghosts of Saltmarsh. And my biggest inspiration for that, similar to Castlevania, is Black Sails, if you've ever seen that on Amazon. That's my biggest
I've seen it advertised, never watched it.
Yeah, same.
Such a good show. Such a good show. It's basically Game of Thrones, but it's pirates, and the ending is satisfying.
Nice.
But when it comes to actually putting a game together, as we've already mentioned, I use modules. I'll also like to have a look through DM's Guild, buy some things I think look interesting and see how I can put those into my games. Then you've got guys like Puffin Forest and all the other YouTubers. Those are my biggest inspirations when I'm putting a session together. Like I said, I don't plan anything until like an hour in advance, but it's ticking around in my head continuously. Like if I've got a session on Friday, on Monday I'll be thinking, okay, so last session, Addison shot someone in the foot. What should I do next time?
Hang on.
And I'll be thinking about that the whole week, and then it'll be like an hour before the session I decide what to actually do.
It's like a eureka moment, isn't it? Like, yes, that's what I'm going to do.
Basically, yeah.
See, it's very interesting that obviously you know that's how you DM, and I reckon we're gonna have a few audience members that will be like, you know what, Leon, I'm with you, boy. Like, hours before the session, I'm making up everything. Like,
you know what? I used to plan sessions in detail. I used to do that. I did that for a whole campaign, actually. It was Waterdeep Dragon Heist, which I ran started late 2018, finished early 2019. It's a rather short campaign. But for that, I would plan the sessions meticulously. There's this NPC and there's this place and so on and so forth. But then the session came around and the players didn't talk to that NPC. They didn't go to that place. And I would just have to make stuff up on the fly anyway. So I thought, why am I wasting all this time planning the session for the players just to throw it out the door?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, I guess it's me. Let's see.
It's
what
you,
question.
so we only
What
need to
do
roll
you
for the
get?
question.
I've got 7.
Oh, okay, you've got a good one. Number 7 is happiest GM moment.
So I've got a couple actually, and most of them involve like player enjoyment. Like, so there's obviously the time when my wife first played, and seeing her get like really excited about that was awesome, and like, she had some really good moments. But I think the happiest I've ever been was there was a kid in the group at the school. He was selective mute. He literally almost like he had a bubble around him, and if you went in that bubble or he went out of that bubble, the world was ending. And he played a ranger, and he always sat near me, maybe a bit too behind the DM screen, but he wasn't. It was like his safety net. And one of the other characters went down, and bearing in mind this kid has not spoken for the whole session. It's been about an hour, and he's not spoken.
Yeah.
And then out of nowhere, I've just got a character sheet on my face, and he just turns around to me and looks at me dead in the eye. Bearing in mind the kid's got a fringe, so he doesn't look at people, like severe autistic tendencies, and he just goes, "Show me what I can do to help him," in a voice I had never heard.
Oh wow.
And I was like, okay. And like my boss at the time, the Senko, was like, "You do realise that was like a big thing, right?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she was like, "Well, he wouldn't have cared." And he was just like, he was so, and it made me well up with pride that this kid who wasn't friends with these kids who he was playing with just went, "Right, I need to help him, so show me how and I will do it." And he did it perfectly, and he was
Bless
like
him.
and then he was like, "Yeah," and then you would hear him talk about like that and other moments to those kids who
That's
would
amazing.
never have been
That is
his
amazing.
friends. Yeah, and would never have been his friends, and it was just it's even making me emotional now.
Yeah, no, that is beautiful. That is the power.
Yeah, my eyes
right
are a
now.
bit wet, and I wasn't even there.
But yeah,
That's
no,
it. That's like Troy, you just said. That's the power. D&D is amazing for people like that. It's got this kid out of his shell.
Yep.
He's talking. There was all this fuss in the 80s about D&D being this demonic cult thing, which was absolutely batshit stupid and crazy and just.
Yeah, I've seen a few. of
But
that was mainly in America, and they
Yeah. But then you hear the stories like you've just told us, and we've each given our own personal stories about how it's helped us. If you're listening to this and you haven't played D&D, just do it. It's one of the best things you can do.
Definitely.
It's a leap of faith, but the world that you will leap into is warm, comforting, and is filled with good people.
Exactly. I was
Yeah.
going to say, like, you will take that leap and you will definitely be caught. There is no no like hard landing, crash or anything. You'll definitely be caught, and you will grow and you'll enjoy it. And like I've said, I've met some of my best friends now through, including yourselves, through D&D.
I mean, D&D has got us doing this podcast, guys, so
Yeah, very true. Very, very true.
I think that's a really nice, wholesome note to wrap this up on.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
the deck of many questions.
Yeah.
Hopefully next time we do this, we can have some questions from some listeners.
Yes.
This is the first one. We are nobodies. So if we do get some listeners, that would be amazing.
Yep.
It would be even more amazing if we can get some questions for this deck of many questions.